The galaxy was vast, filled with thousands of intelligent species. Yet, even in such a huge universe, every civilization carried its own fears. Some feared war, some feared invasion, and some feared the unknown. But there was one fear that every species shared, whether they admitted it or not: the fear of humans. Not because humans were conquerors or tyrants, but because they came from a planet that shaped them into something no other world ever produced. A place where everything from the animals to the weather tried to kill anything that lived. And somehow, humans still survived, adapted, and eventually reached the stars. Many called them dangerous. Many called them unpredictable. But one thing everyone agreed on: if humans took something seriously, they became terrifying. For years, the Galactic Council tried to understand humanity. They invited humans to meetings, asked them about their world, and tried to guide them into becoming a peaceful part of the galaxy's growing alliance. But the more the Council learned, the more they realized that understanding humans fully was impossible. They were kind but fierce. They were friendly but ruthless when provoked. They loved deeply, protected strongly, and fought like no one else when innocent lives were threatened. Most civilizations developed slowly, building peace through avoidance. Humans built peace through overcoming danger. The Council had a long list of species, each with their own nature. The gentle Saraxi, who communicated through songs. The wise Altrans, who lived for centuries and preferred meditation over conflict. The fragile but brilliant Velnari, known for their advanced technology but little physical strength. And then there were the humans, chaotic, loud, emotional, determined, and born from a world that forced them to evolve into survivors. The Council often whispered about them behind closed doors, calling them Deathworlders, a term that was both respectful and fearful. Life in the galaxy changed often, but not as quickly as it did one quiet cycle. When a small but important message echoed across the stars, it wasn't loud, it wasn't long, it wasn't even directed at the Council. Yet it changed everything. It was a distress call, a simple SOS. 3 short pulses, repeated again and again, one of the oldest universal signals. A cry for help that anyone could recognize. The origin of the signal was traced to Velnari space, a region known for peace, trade, and harmless scientific research. The Velnari were never aggressive. They never fought, never expanded their territory, and never threatened anyone. They believed knowledge and cooperation were enough to keep their people safe. That belief had lasted for hundreds of years until the day violence came to their doorstep. The message was faint and broken, as if the sender had been running or hiding when it was sent. But even in its damaged state, the desperation in the signal was clear. Someone was in danger. Someone was being attacked. Someone was begging for help. The moment the distress signal reached the Galactic Council headquarters, alarms blared through the massive building. Council members rushed into the central chamber, their faces filled with concern. Screens lit up with the signal's data, showing static-filled fragments of ships, explosions, and terrified voices. The Velnari were under attack, but no one knew who the attackers were or what they wanted. Inside the chamber, dozens of species gathered, talking, arguing, and debating. The Council always reacted this way: slow, cautious, and careful. They were afraid of making the wrong decision, afraid of starting a war, were afraid of angering the wrong civilization. Their response was always diplomacy first, negotiations second, and maybe, if absolutely necessary, a mild defensive action. While the Council argued, the situation in Velnari space worsened. Colony after colony fell silent. Refugee ships fled in every direction. Entire cities were burned. And still, the Council talked. Their fear was understandable. The attackers were the Zarkaith Dominion, a brutal species known for destroying anything weak. But fear alone wasn't going to save the Velnari. As the Council hesitated, the distress signal continued to spread across the galaxy, passing through communication networks, bouncing from satellite to satellite, and eventually it reached someone who did not hesitate. It reached Earth. The signal arrived inside the Human Defense Network, a sprawling system of satellites, listening posts, and orbital stations that monitored deep space activity. When the signal played in the command room, every officer went silent, not because they didn't know what it meant, but because they did. The humans had a rule older than space travel, older than their alliances, older than the Council itself. If someone calls for help and you can reach them, you go. No excuses. No permission needed. No waiting for political approval. You go. The moment the humans decoded the message and identified the sender as Velnari, one of their closest allies over the past decade, everything snapped into motion. Officers sent alerts. Fleet commanders were awakened. Emergency lights flashed along military stations. Within minutes, the most feared formation in human history was being mobilized: the Predator Fleet. Most species didn't believe the Predator Fleet truly existed. They heard rumors, saw glimpses of enormous warships during joint training exercises. But many thought the stories were exaggerated. Humans never bragged about their fleet. They didn't flaunt their power. They simply prepared for the worst because they came from a world where the worst was normal. But the Predator Fleet was real, and it was not built for politics or negotiations. It was built for one purpose: to end threats that endangered innocent lives. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the debate dragged on. Some argued for sending ambassadors, others suggested observing from a distance. A few proposed small escort ships to protect fleeing civilians, but no one suggested confronting the Zarkath directly. No one wanted to face them. No one wanted to risk their own fleets that then. Without warning, an alert flashed across every council screen. A massive fleet had just activated long-range hyperspace drives, hundreds of ships moving as one. The council panicked, thinking it was the Zarkath expanding their attack, but then they saw the identification codes. Earth's Defense Command. The council hall fell silent. Some members stood in shock. Others whispered nervously. A few openly panicked. Humanity had not requested permission. Humanity had not waited. Humanity had launched their most feared armada in response to the distress signal. The council had always suspected humans would act this way during a crisis. Now they were witnessing it for the first time. Their fear was not rooted in hatred. It was rooted in the knowledge that when humans committed to something, they committed entirely, and once their fleet arrived in a conflict, the conflict usually ended swiftly and violently. Yet there was another side to their fear, a quieter one, a feeling they didn't voice out loud, because deep down, beneath the worry and the doubt, they all knew something else, something many were afraid to admit. If the humans didn't act, nobody else would. As the Predator fleet tore through hyperspace toward Valneri space, the council watched the live feeds in uneasy anticipation. They didn't know what would happen next. They didn't know how the humans would respond once they saw the destruction. They didn't know how the Zarkath would react when they realized what kind of enemy they had provoked. But one thing was sure, the galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before, the full, unrestrained arrival of humanity's death world-born Predator fleet answering an innocent civilization's desperate call for help, and the council, for the first time in many years, felt something unfamiliar, hope. Mixed with fear. Asterisk. The situation in Valneri space was getting worse with every passing hour. Their peaceful blue and silver cities, once filled with scientists and gentle families, were now covered in smoke. Entire colonies sent final messages before falling silent forever. Refugee ships tried to escape, but many were hunted down by the Zarkath Dominion, an empire known for brutality, greed, and a cold hunger for expansion. That Valneri were brilliant at technology and research, but they had never prepared for war. They believed knowledge could stop conflict. They believed diplomacy could prevent violence. They believed the galaxy was more kind than cruel. But the Zarkath Dominion did not care about peace or knowledge. They only understood strength and conquest. At the Galactic Council, everyone knew the truth. The Valneri were being crushed. Their defenses were too weak, their ships too slow, and their people too gentle to survive such a merciless enemy. Yet the council acted the same way it always did: long meetings, complicated debates, and small promises. They worried about political consequences. They worried about territory disputes. They worried that helping the Valneri would make the Zarkath angry, and so they wasted precious time arguing about things that didn't matter to the dying Valneri families who were crying out for help. Inside the council chamber, representatives sat in a huge circle. Some were nervous, some were angry, some were scared. Many were simply unsure. They watched the live feeds showing burning cities and destroyed ships, yet still, they hesitated. Someone suggested sending a small medical team. Another suggested sending diplomats to talk to the Zarkath. Someone else said they should wait for more information. And while they talked, the Zarkath advanced further, destroying everything in their path. What the council didn't know was that the Valneri had sent their SOS signal not only to the council but across all neighboring sectors. They hoped anyone would hear them. They didn't expect humanity to be the ones to respond first and with such force. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the reaction was completely different. The distress call had been picked up, examined, and verified. That Valneri had indeed begged for help. Within minutes, the Human Defense Command had sounded high-priority alarms. Officers moved through the command center with urgency. Lights turned red, indicating full military mobilization. Humanity didn't schedule meetings. They didn't argue. They didn't wait. They simply acted. The Predator fleet, humanity's strongest and most dangerous armada, was already warming its engines. The fleet was composed of giant warships with thick armor, razor-sharp designs, and weapons capable of tearing whole battle groups apart. Each ship had a reputation. Each crew trained for the worst missions. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the Death Worlder's finest warriors. People who had survived extreme training in conditions that most species wouldn't even attempt. Their fleet commander, Admiral Arya Solas, stood on the bridge of the flagship Horizon's Wrath. Her expression was calm but fierce. She had fought in 3 major wars and saved millions of lives, both human and alien. She knew what awaited them in Valneri space. She also knew that hesitation would mean death for the innocent. Her voice echoed through the fleet's communication network. The Valneri asked for help. We answer their call. No second chances for the enemy. No hesitation. Protect the weak. Stop the attackers. Move out. The Predator fleet jumped into hyperspace, leaving Earth behind in a flash of blue light. Back at the Galactic Council, fear spread quickly. When the council screens lit up, showing the enormous human fleet leaving Earth, The chamber erupted with panic. No one had expected the humans to respond so quickly. A few council members shouted that the humans were going to start a bigger war. Others whispered that maybe the humans were the only ones willing to stand against the Zarkath. Some worried about how powerful the humans had become, but others felt relief, even if they didn't say it aloud. They knew the humans would not ignore the Velnary's suffering. The council tried to regain control. They sent messages to Earth demanding explanations, demanding that the Predator fleet stand down, demanding that humans wait for council approval. But the messages received a simple response. We are responding to a distress signal. Lives are in immediate danger. Standing down is not an option. The council couldn't decide what to do. Some species admired human bravery. Others feared human aggression. But whether they liked it or not, humanity was already on its way, and nothing could stop them. While the council debated, the Predator fleet raced through hyperspace. Inside the ships, soldiers prepared their weapons. Engineers checked engines. Pilots studied star maps showing the latest reports from Velnary space. Every person on board knew the mission was serious. Every person knew innocent lives depended on them. Many of them had friends among the Velnary. They had worked together on scientific projects, cultural exchanges, and trade missions. Humanity respected the Velnary for their kindness and intelligence, and now those same people were being hunted like prey. Inside one of the ships, a young Marine named Darius watched recorded footage of Velnary families fleeing burning buildings. He had never met a Velnary in person, but he felt rage rising inside him. No one should suffer like that, he muttered. His commanding officer overheard him and said, "That's why we're going, to make sure they don't suffer any longer." In another part of the fleet, pilots ran simulations to prepare for encounters with Zarkath warships. The Zarkath were infamous for their huge, heavily armored vessels, but human ships weren't just strong, they were fast, sharp, and unpredictable. Many species thought humans built ships to look intimidating. The truth was simpler. Humans built them for survival. The closer the fleet got to Velnary space, the more intense the atmosphere became. Reports arrived of new Velnary colonies falling. The Zarkath had set entire forests on fire. Refugee ships were being captured. The Velnary Council itself was pleading for immediate assistance. Finally, the Predator fleet exited hyperspace near the outer border of Velnary territory. What they saw on their screens made even the experienced human soldiers tense up. Giant Zarkath dreadnoughts hung in space like dark predators. Smaller hunter ships chased fleeing Velnary transports. Explosions lit up the void as helpless civilians tried to escape. The humans felt their anger grow. The fleet commander gave the order, "Weapons online. Shield up. Protect every Velnary ship you see." As the humans prepared for contact, the Galactic Council continued their debates. They watched the live feed of human ships arriving at the battlefield. Some council members covered their eyes, expecting the worst. Others leaned forward in silent awe. For the first time in years, they were seeing the humans on the move, not in peace, not in diplomacy, but in the role that the galaxy secretly feared, the role of predators protecting prey. The rising challenge was reaching its peak. The Velnary were moments away from extinction. The Zarkath were crushing them without mercy. The Council was frozen with fear, and humanity was seconds away from entering the fight. The galaxy was holding its breath, and humanity's Predator fleet was ready to exhale fire. The moment the Predator fleet exited hyperspace, everything changed. 1 second. Space was dark and filled only with burning Velnary ships and the terrifying silhouettes of the Zarkath war armada. The next second, massive human battlecruisers tore into existence, their engines glowing like blue fire. The humans had arrived in perfect formation, sharp, disciplined, and overwhelmingly powerful. The Velnary survivors who saw them appear began to cry out in relief. Many had given up hope. Many believed they would die. But now, for the first time since the attack began, they felt something they hadn't felt in days. Safety. It came in the form of metal giants shaped by a death world inside the Galactic Council chamber. All arguments stopped as the live feed zoomed in on the human fleet. Representatives froze. Some stared in disbelief. Others whispered in fear. No one had ever seen the Predator fleet gathered in full force. They had heard stories, rumors, warnings, but seeing it with their own eyes was different. The ships didn't look like normal warships. They looked like hunters, angular, armored, and built to strike. It was like watching a pack of wolves enter a field full of predators that didn't know they were about to become prey. On the human flagship, Admiral Aria Sola stood at the center of her command bridge. Her face was calm, her eyes sharp, and her voice steady. She gave only one message to the Zarkath, just one. The transmission echoed across open space. "Evacuate Velnary space. Final notice." Every species in the council expected the Zarkath to at least hesitate, but the Zarkath were arrogant and confident. They believed humans were soft-hearted creatures because they helped weaker species. They believed humans would not dare to fight the Dominion. So instead of retreating, the Zarkath warships fired their weapons at the Predator fleet. That moment became the critical point of the entire conflict. The first barrage of Zarkath energy blasts shot across open space, turning the battlefield into a storm of glowing explosions. Velnary refugees screamed. Council members gasped. Even some humans felt a jolt of adrenaline, but human shields absorbed the attack, glowing briefly as they dispersed the energy. Not a single human ship took serious damage. Then Admiral Solas spoke, 2 words that would be remembered for years across the galaxy: return fire. What happened next didn't look like a battle. It looked like nature, unstoppable, violent. The Predator fleet moved with deadly precision. Human warships didn't float forward like the Zarkatha vessels. They sped, they twisted, they dodged. They fought like creatures that had evolved under constant danger. Their maneuvers were sharp and animal-like, confusing the Zarkatha gunners. It was like watching a school of predatory fish cutting through the water with perfect coordination. Human cannons roared. Their railguns fired slugs at near-light speed, ripping through Zarkatha armor like it was paper. Their missiles streaked across the void, weaving through enemy fire as if they had minds of their own. Their plasma beams burned with white-blue brightness, slicing enemy ships in half. Every shot was accurate, every movement efficient, every second deadly. Within the first 60 seconds, the humans destroyed the entire first line of Zarkatha warships. Council members watching the feed could only stare. Stunned VELNARI survivors, watching from their damaged escape pods, felt tears form in their eyes. They whispered prayers of gratitude. They whispered the word humans with relief and disbelief. The Zarkatha commanders panicked. They had expected a weak opponent. Instead, they faced a force unlike anything they had ever encountered. They tried to reorganize. They tried to form defensive walls. They tried to retreat, but the Predator fleet kept pushing forward, fast and unstoppable. A squadron of human interceptors broke formation and darted toward the Zarkatha bomber wing. The small human fighters moved like living creatures, rolling, diving, spinning with impossible speed. Zarkatha's pilots tried to lock onto them, but the humans were too fast. One by one, the Zarkatha bombers exploded as human pilots fired perfect shots. On the battlefield, a massive Zarkatha dreadnought, the largest and strongest vessel in the enemy fleet, turned its guns toward the human flagship and fired a beam strong enough to slice a moon in half. The council representatives screamed as the beam struck the horizon's wrath. The brightness blinded the cameras. For a moment it seemed like the flagship had been destroyed, but as the light faded, the flagship slowly emerged from the glare, shields glowing but intact. The council chamber erupted in gasps. The Zarkatha dreadnought crew stared in shock. The humans didn't pause. 3 human destroyers dove toward the dreadnought at frightening speed, all weapons firing at once. Explosions danced across the giant warship's surface. Its armor cracked. Its engines sputtered. And then, with one final railgun barrage, the dreadnought split in 2 and drifted apart like broken stone. But the most critical moment of escalation was still ahead. The Zarkatha flagship, the heart of the invasion force, attempted to escape. It ignited its hyperjump engines, trying to flee toward neutral territory. If the ship escaped, the Dominion could rebuild. The war would continue. More vulnerable colonies would fall. Admiral Solas saw the movement instantly. "Cut off their exit," she ordered. The Predator fleet moved like a pack of predators encircling a wounded animal. Human cruisers jumped ahead of the Zarkatha flagship, blocking its escape route. Interceptors swarmed around it. The massive vessel tried to fire back, but its shots couldn't penetrate the human barrier. Then the humans did something the council did not expect. They boarded the ship. Dozens of human drop pods launched from the horizon's wrath, streaking through space and slamming into the Zarkatha flagship's hull. The pods opened like metal claws, releasing armored marines armed with shock rifles, plasma blades, and magnetic boots. The humans stormed through the corridors with terrifying skill. They moved silently, efficiently, like shadows with weapons. The council watched every second. They had never seen humans in real ground combat before, only in training. But this was different. This was real. And it was terrifying in a way that words could not describe. Zarkatha soldiers fired desperately, but human armor absorbed the blasts. Human marines fought with brutal precision, moving in perfect formations. Every step forward pushed the Zarkatha back. Every corridor taken brought the marines closer to the command deck. Finally, Admiral Solas gave the order to the boarding team: capture their leadership, alive. The marines reached the Zarkatha command room. The Zarkatha generals, realizing they were seconds away from death, dropped their weapons and surrendered. These were warriors known for cruelty and stubbornness, but facing humans this close, they didn't dare resist. The council chamber went silent. The war had changed in that moment. Not because the humans had won the battle, but because of how they won decisively, quickly, overwhelmingly. The Predator fleet had crushed the dominant enemy of the region in less than an hour. Around the battlefield, vulnerable survivors listened as human medics contacted them. Human rescue ships moved to pick up refugees. Human engineers helped stabilize damaged transports. Human soldiers stood guard to ensure no Zarkatha ships returned. From the moment the distress signal reached Earth to the moment the Zarkatha's flagship fell, humanity had shown the galaxy something unforgettable. They were death welders, but their fury wasn't born from hatred. It was born from protection. The escalation reached its highest point in those final minutes as the council watched everything unfold. Their fear grew, but something else grew with it: respect, awe, and a deep realization. Humans did not just fight to win, they fought to save. The galaxy would never forget the moment humanity unleashed its full strength and did it not for themselves, but for a people who had begged for help. This was the moment everything changed. The moment humanity proved why. Every species whispered their name with both fear and hope. This was the moment the Predator fleet showed the galaxy its true power. The battlefield slowly began to quiet. What only hours ago had been filled with explosions, screams, and burning ships was now a wide, calm emptiness dotted with drifting debris. The Zarkath invasion force was gone. Human ships surrounded the area like silent guardians, and for the first time since the attack began, Velnary space felt safe. Inside the human flagship, Admiral Arya Solos took a deep breath. The hardest part was over, but the work was still not finished. Rescuing the Velnary survivors was now the top priority. Human rescue teams launched in waves, their ships moving gently around the broken remains of cities and colonies. They searched for life signs, brought injured civilians aboard, and helped damaged transports stabilize their engines. Everywhere the human fleet moved, relief followed. On one of the smaller human rescue ships, a medic named Ina Torres gently lifted a Velnary child from a collapsed shelter. The child's eyes were large and bright, but filled with fear. Ina spoke softly. "You're safe now. We've got you." Though the child didn't understand the human language, the tone was enough. The child clung to her armor and began to cry, not from pain but from the sudden release of fear they had carried for too long. Many Velnary reacted, in the same way, shaking, crying, staring at the humans with a mixture of shock and gratitude. Human soldiers who had been fierce and deadly moments earlier transformed into calm protectors. They carried injured civilians, treated wounds, handed out water, and guided refugees to safe zones. Their voices were gentle now, their movements slow and careful. The same hands that had fired weapons with perfect accuracy were now bandaging wounds with tenderness. Darts back in the Galactic Council chamber. Silence remained. No one argued anymore. No one debated what should be done. They simply watched. Humans moving through the ruins, doing exactly what they had come for, saving lives. Many council members had expected humans to be angry, loud, or aggressive after battle, but instead, they saw the other side of humanity, the side that their own species often forgot existed: a deep, natural drive to protect. The council representatives exchanged glances. They knew the truth now. Humanity was dangerous, yes, but only to those who harmed the innocent. One council member whispered, "They destroy the enemy, and then they heal the victims." Another murmured, "They are predators, but they choose to be guardians." Even the older, more cautious species began to understand what made humans so different. Humans came from a world of storms, predators, and constant threats, but instead of becoming heartless, they became compassionate. Instead of becoming conquerors, they became protectors. They understood fear because they grew up with it. They understood pain because their world taught them, and because they understood these things, they worked harder than anyone to prevent others from suffering. Meanwhile, in Velnary space, the survivors slowly realized they were no longer alone. Human ships spread out like a protective net around the system. They made sure no Zarkath reinforcements could return. They scanned every planet for hidden survivors. They repaired damaged communication towers so the Velnary people could talk to each other again. Asterisk on the surface of one half-destroyed Velnary city. Human engineers worked side by side with Velnary scientists to restore energy grids. The Velnary were brilliant, but they were shaken. Their hands trembled as they tried to work. The humans noticed this immediately. A human engineer placed a reassuring hand on a Velnary's shoulder and said, with a warm smile, "We'll fix it together." It was such a small gesture, but it meant everything. The Velnary looked at the human and felt their fear slowly melt away. In orbit, the captured Zarkath generals were brought aboard a human prison ship. They expected torture or harsh treatment. Humans had defeated their entire invasion, for surely they would want revenge. But instead, the Zarkath were treated according to strict war protocols. They were given food, medical checks, and contained safely. Humans did not harm them because humans didn't fight out of hatred. They fought to protect, not to punish. This confused the Zarkath completely. They were a species that believed strength came from cruelty. Seeing strength combined with mercy was something new to them, something they could not understand, but the galaxy understood it clearly. Humanity was powerful not because they were feared, but because they chose when to use their power as ours. Past, more and more Velnary survivors were brought to human ships where medics waited. The humans created emergency hospitals in the cargo bays, turning cold metal rooms into warm shelters. Blankets were distributed. Food was offered. Simple words of comfort were shared, even though the languages were different. It didn't matter. Kindness did not require translation. Asterisk when Admiral Solus finally appeared on the Velnary Council's emergency broadcast. Millions of Velnary saw her face. She didn't give a political speech. She didn't demand praise. She simply said, "You are safe now. We will stay until your worlds are rebuilt. You are not alone." Those words spread across the Velnari systems like light breaking through darkness. Parents who thought they would never see their children again wept with relief. Elders who thought their culture would be erased felt their hearts lift. Students and researchers who had watched their cities fall now had hope again. The Galactic Council observed everything with growing respect and shame. Shame because they had hesitated. Shame because they had let fear control their decisions. Shame because they had left the Velnari alone. And respect because the humans had not hesitated. The humans had acted when no one else did. Slowly, the council members began sending messages to Admiral Solas. They offered assistance, supplies, ships, anything that could help. But Admiral Solas responded calmly, "Your help is welcome, but unnecessary. That Velnari needs stability. Let us finish what we started." Not in an arrogant way, not in a proud way, simply in a confident, determined way. That humans had started this mission, and they would not leave until every Velnari was safe. Meanwhile, on Earth, people watched the events unfold through live broadcasts. News channels showed images of human soldiers comforting Velnari children, human engineers rebuilding structures, human medics healing injuries. Earth's population felt proud, not because their fleet had destroyed an enemy, but because their people were saving a gentle civilization. Children in schools drew pictures of humans and Velnari holding hands. Workers in factories donated supplies. Families sent messages of support to the Velnari through interplanetary networks. Humanity's heart was wide open, visible to the entire galaxy. As the Creditor fleet continued its rescue operations, something changed. The fear that the Council once felt began turning into admiration. The fear the Velnari once felt turned into trust. The fear the galaxy felt about humans began shifting into something deeper. Recognition that humanity was not a threat, unless someone threatened the innocent. Days passed. The battlefield was cleared. Survivors were safe. The Zarkath invasion force was completely gone, and human ships remained, watching over the Velnari worlds like silent guardians. The resolution of this crisis was not defined only by the human victory in battle, but by what they did afterward. They did not conquer. They did not demand tribute. They did not seek control. They stayed to rebuild, to comfort, to protect. And the Velnari, once peaceful and afraid, found strength again, not from their own weapons, but from the assurance that they had true allies among the stars. Humanity had answered their call. Not late, not halfway, not with hesitation, but fully, fiercely, and with everything they had. This was how the war ended, not with the roar of cannons, but with the quiet promise that the humans would not let anyone suffer alone. The days after the great battle felt strangely quiet across the galaxy. It was as if the stars themselves needed time to breathe. The council hall, once filled with fear and confusion, now felt heavy in a different way. Every member who had watched the destruction of the Dravik fleet still carried the same question inside their minds. What had humanity become? They had expected allies, maybe rescuers, perhaps a disciplined strike force. But what they saw instead was something beyond anything their history had prepared them for. They witnessed a species that did not hesitate when danger appeared, a species that answered a cry for help with the force of a storm, with power that shattered fleets in minutes. And now, in the quiet aftermath, they were left trying to understand what it meant. The recording of the battle had already spread across all member worlds of the Council. People replayed it again and again, watching the moment when the human Predator fleet arrived. They watched the formation shift like a living creature, intelligent and adaptive. They watched human ships turn Dravik warships into burning fragments with impossible precision. Many were amazed. Many were frightened. Some even questioned if calling the humans had been the right decision. But deep inside, everyone knew the truth. If the humans hadn't come, the Council homeworld would have fallen, and millions would have died. The survivors of the Venari colony, those who had sent the first desperate SOS, could barely express their gratitude. Their homes were destroyed, their families scattered, but they were alive. And that life was owed to the humans who had crossed light years with such speed and purpose that even the Council's fastest ships felt slow by comparison. When a small group of Venari refugees requested an audience at the Council hall, they arrived with trembling hands and bright eyes. They spoke softly but with deep emotion, thanking the Council for listening, and thanking humanity for answering. But the Council members were not celebrating. Their hearts were unsettled. This was not fear of humans. It was something far more complicated. The battle had opened their eyes not just to the strength of a powerful species, but to the reality of what it meant to coexist with them. The humans were Deathworlders, creatures shaped by harsh environments, violent evolution, and endless challenges. Every instinct inside them was sharpened for survival, and when they fought with everything they had. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no second guess. The Dravak had provoked a force they could never have understood on the days that followed. The humans did not return to Earth immediately. Instead, they sent envoys, calm, polite, respectful envoys who walked into the council hall with perfectly formal greetings. This confused many members who had expected warriors, not diplomats. The envoys were nothing like the battle fleet. They smiled easily. They asked about losses, about wounded civilians, about reconstruction needs. Their tone was gentle, almost warm. It was unbelievable that the same species capable of turning an entire enemy armada to dust could also speak with such compassion. One council member, a long-lived Serani elder named Hilira, spoke to a human envoy in private. Her voice trembled when she asked, "Are your people always so fierce in battle?" The human, a soft-spoken representative named Captain Irene Valens, looked down slightly and took a deep breath before answering, "We don't like war, but if someone harms the innocent, we do not hold back. We fight until the threat cannot return." Her words were simple, almost quiet, but they carried a weight that Hilira felt in her bones. She realized then that humanity's strength did not come from violence alone, it came from an unshakable commitment to protect. As relief efforts began across the damaged council worlds, human engineers arrived with technology that many had never seen before. Mobile atmospheric stabilizers, nano-soil repair machines, modular shelters that unfolded in minutes, equipment so advanced and efficient that even the council's best teams couldn't match it. But what surprised everyone most was how the humans worked. They didn't act like conquerors or heroes. They worked side by side with other species. They helped injured workers, they shared their supplies freely, and they did all of this without expecting anything in return. Slowly, the galaxy's view of humanity began to shift. Fear turned into respect. Anxiety turned into gratitude. The council world started to understand that humans were not monsters with fleets of steel. They were protectors forged by a world that demanded strength. Their power was immense, but it was guided by intention, shaped by empathy, controlled by discipline. And the galaxy realized something important. Strength like this could be dangerous, but it could also be the greatest friend they ever had. Yet not everyone accepted this change easily. In private chambers, some council members debated humanity's involvement in future conflicts. A few were worried that dependence on humans would grow too strong. Others worried about provoking a species capable of such destruction. A small number even questioned whether humans should be limited or regulated within the Council Alliance. But their voices weakened quickly. Every time one of them spoke against humanity, someone would remind them of a simple truth. Without humans, they wouldn't even be alive to debate. On Earth, the return of the Predator fleet was marked by silence rather than celebration. The humans were proud of saving lives, but they were also deeply aware of the destruction they had caused. They understood that war, even when necessary, left scars. Families of the pilots who died in the battle received quiet condolences, and the fallen were honored in solemn ceremonies. Humanity did not take pride in killing. Their pride came from protecting, from showing the galaxy that strength could be used for good. A few weeks later, the council invited the human representatives to speak at the Grand Assembly. The hall was filled with thousands of delegates, all eager, some nervous, to hear the humans' thoughts after the battle. When Captain Irene Valens stepped forward, she did not boast about the victory. She did not threaten anyone. Instead, she spoke in honest, humble words that echoed across the vast chamber. "We responded because someone cried for help," she said, "and if it happens again, we will respond again. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as allies. We don't fight to dominate, we fight to protect." Her speech moved many who had once feared humanity. For the first time, they saw the real heart behind the terrifying fleet. They saw a species that had chosen compassion despite being shaped by a world that taught them cruelty. They saw a species that could destroy monsters but also rebuild what those monsters had broken. Over time, the Dravik threat faded, broken and scattered by the destruction of their main fleet. Small pockets of resistance remained in distant corners of the galaxy, but even they hesitated to strike again, knowing humans might return. For the Council, it was a chance to rebuild, to strengthen their worlds, and to rethink their old assumptions about strength and weakness. The Venari survivors eventually resettled on a new world offered by the Council. Human engineers helped design their cities, human doctors helped treat their trauma, human teachers even came to help rebuild their education systems. The Venari children loved these teachers the most. They listened with wide eyes as humans told stories of Earth's dangerous forests, massive oceans, violent storms, and all the struggles their species had overcome. And those children grew up with a new understanding. Sometimes the strongest protectors come from the harshest worlds, but the greatest change happened inside the Council itself. The battle became a turning point, a moment when the galaxy realized that alliances were not just treaties, they were promises. Before the battle, many species saw humans as unpredictable and primitive. After the battle, they saw something different, a guardian, a species whose strength, when guided by purpose, could keep the galaxy safe. In the following years, the Council launched a new initiative called the Cooperative Defense Network. Humans were asked to help design strategies, technologies, and emergency protocols that could stop future threats before they grew too large. The humans agreed, but only if every species participated equally. They didn't want to become the galaxy's shield alone. They wanted unity. This decision changed everything. It forced the Council species to grow stronger, smarter, more responsible. It pushed them to understand their own weaknesses and improve, and it showed them that true strength was not only about power, it was about cooperation, trust, and shared purpose. As time passed, Stories about the great battle became legends. Children across the galaxy grew up hearing about the moment when humanity answered an SOS call with a fleet so powerful that it stopped a war in minutes. Some were frightened by the tale, others were inspired, but all of them learned one lesson clearly. Help can come from unexpected places, and sometimes the fiercest warriors carry the gentlest hearts, and the humans, they carried their own lessons forward. They learned that the galaxy was far more fragile than Earth. They learned that their strength was needed, but their empathy mattered even more. They learned that fear could turn into respect, and respect could turn into friendship. And they learned that even in a vast universe filled with danger, one simple truth remained unchanging. When someone cries for help, someone must answer. Years later, when another distant species sent out a distress signal from an unknown corner of space, the relay stations detected it instantly. The Council hesitated only for a moment. Then, without waiting for debate, without waiting for fear, they sent a message to Earth. And humanity replied with the same words they had spoken before. "We hear you. We're coming." The galaxy understood then that the Predator fleet was not a terror, it was a promise. A promise that no innocent cry would ever go unanswered again.